1,000 miles, the Yaśodā arrived in Boston Harbor. The Coast Guard saluted the crew as they disembarked. Sailors unloaded the cargo, and the following day the ship departed for New York. At noon on September 18th, 1965, Swami Prabhupada started out at skyscrapers lining the horizon like giant concrete teeth, took out his pen, and composed a poem in his native Bengali. "My dear Lord Krishna," he wrote, "I guess you have some business here. Otherwise, why would you bring me to this terrible place? Now it is up to you to make a success or failure as you like. I'm just like a puppet in your hands. So if you have brought me here to dance, then make me dance, O Lord, make me dance as you like." On the morning of September 19th, he dressed in a saffron-colored dhoti and put on white rubber shoes. He packed his small bag and said goodbye to the captain and crew and thanked them for their hospitality. Then he arranged for the 200 sets of his 3-volume Bhagavatams to be stored in the Scindia warehouse. If somehow or other he was able to sell a few copies, he would use the money to cover expenses for however long he stayed in America. Then he picked up his tiny suitcase and a bag of cereal and tucked his umbrella under his arm. Holding the railing as firmly as his recovering muscles would allow, he descended the gangplank, stepped off the Yaśodā, and walked into the future. Hari Hari Bol. Jai Srila Prabhupada. This is a great story, and we are part of that story as members of the Sankirtan mission that he created on September 19th, 1965. And by the way, September 19th is also, by Krishna's arrangement, my birthday and the birthday of one of our members, Bhakta Jeffrey. Hari Hari Bol. Glories to Prabhupada. Please, if we could come forward with the Jaya Radha Madhava prayers, and then we'll have the reading and the lecture by Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Sai. Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Radha भक्तिवेदांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय, रामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवास आदि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गो गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरिवर्धन की जय, वृंदावन धाम की जय, नवद्वीप धाम की जय, स्वामी तो भक्तवृंद की जय, गंगा माई की जय, जमुना माई की जय, तुलसी देवी की जय, भक्ति देवी की जय, स्वामी तो भक्तवृंद की जय। All glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to the assembled Lord. Thank you very much.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagar Jatam Sahaguna Raghunathan Anvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahaguna Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Scha E Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpati Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Ghurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namah Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Today we'll be reading from Bhagavad-gītā As It Is. We are reading from the original 1972 non-edited, non-adulterated version of Bhagavad-gītā. We are reading from chapter 7, text number 18 on page 389. All translations, synonyms, and purports by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda, Founder-Ācārya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, also known as the Krishna Consciousness Movement. Udaraha sarva eveti jnani tvatvemame matam astita sahayuktatma Mamivanuttamam gatim udaraha magnanimous. Sarve all. Eva certainly. Ete these. Jnani one who is in knowledge. Two but. Atma atma. Eva just like myself. Me mine. Matam opinion. Astitaha situated. Sa he certainly. Yukta atma engaged in devotional service. Mam unto me. Eva certainly. Anuttamam the highest goal. Gatim destination. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. All these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls, but he who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider verily to dwell in me. Being engaged in my transcendental service, he attains me. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It is not that other devotees who are less complete in knowledge are not dear to the Lord. The Lord says that all are magnanimous because anyone who comes to the Lord for any purpose is called a Mahatma or great soul. The devotees who want some benefit out of devotional service are accepted by the Lord because there is an exchange of affection. Out of affection, they ask the Lord for some material benefit. And when they get it, they become so satisfied that they also advance in devotional service. But the devotee in full knowledge is considered to be very dear to the Lord because his only purpose is to serve the Supreme Lord with love and devotion. Such a devotee cannot live a second without contacting or serving the Supreme Lord. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is very fond of his devotee and cannot be separated from him. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 9:457, the Lord says, Aham bhakta paradhino yasvatantra ivadvija sadhubhya grantaridayo bhakter bhakta jana priyaham. The devotees are always in my heart, and I'm always in the heart of the devotees. The devotee does not know anything beyond me, and I also cannot forget the devotee. There is a very intimate relationship between me and the pure devotees. Pure devotees in full knowledge are never out of spiritual touch, and therefore they are very much dear to me. Text number 19. Bahunam janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyate vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sudurlabha. Bahunam, many, janmanam, births, ante, after, jnanavan, he possessing knowledge, mam, unto me, prapadyate, surrender, vasudevaha, cause of all causes, sarvam, all, iti, thus, sa, such, Mahatma, great soul, Sudurlabha, very rare. Translation by His Divine Grace. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The living entity, while executing devotional service or transcendental rituals after many, many births, may actually become situated in transcendental pure knowledge that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate goal of spiritual realization. In the beginning of spiritual realization, while one is trying to give up one's attachment to materialism, there is some leaning towards impersonalism. But when one is further advanced, he can understand that there are activities in this spiritual life and that these activities constitute devotional service. Realizing this, he becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and surrenders to him. At such a time, one can understand that Lord Sri Krishna's mercy is everything, that he is the cause of all causes, and that this material manifestation is not independent from him. He realizes the material world to be a perverted reflection of spiritual variegatedness, and realize that in everything there is a relationship with the Supreme Lord Krishna. Thus, he thinks of everything in relation to Vasudeva or Sri Krishna. Such a universal version of Vasudeva precipitates one's full surrender to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna as the highest goal. Such surrender great souls are very rare. This verse is very nicely explained in the 3rd chapter of Shvetasvatara Upanishad. In this body, there are powers of speaking, of seeing, of hearing, of mental activities, etc. But these are not important if not related to the Supreme Lord. And because Vasudeva is all-pervading, and everything is Vasudeva, the devotee surrenders in full knowledge. Bhagavad-gītā 7:17 and 11:40. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances. We offer our respectful obeisances unto our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, who has opened my eyes, who has opened our eyes from the darkness of ignorance with a torchlight of transcendental knowledge. Namaom Vishnupadaya, Krishna Prestaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine, Namaste Saraswati Devi, Gauravani Pracharine, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi, Pashatya Deshatarine, Bhaktisiddhanta Shishyaya Bhaktivedanta Namine Prasannaya Prashantaya Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaham Bhagavad-vandanam Khadyam Guru Vandana Purvakam Kshiram Sharkara Yuktam Kadati Visheshataham Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrindam Shri Rup Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunatha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So these two verses in the Bhagavad-gītā are very significant. Of course, every verse, every word of Bhagavad-gītā is very significant, but some verses in particular were cited or quoted by Srila Prabhupada, His Divine Grace, many times, specifically text number 19, Bahunam Janmanamante. If we look in the chapter 7, text number 3, there's also a very important verse in a very similar context. It is described, Manushyanam Sahasreshu Kaschid Dyatati Siddhaye Dyatatam Apisiddhanam Kaschin Mam Viti Tatvataha. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection. And out of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. Prabhupada cites in the purport, Krishna can only be known by persons who are in Krishna consciousness. Other transcendentalists may achieve impersonal Brahman realization, for this is easier than understanding Krishna. Krishna is the supreme person, but at the same time, he's beyond the knowledge of Brahman and Paramatma. The yogis and jnanis are confused in their attempts to understand Krishna. Although the greatest of the impersonalists, Sripad Shankaracharya, has admitted in his Gita commentary that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. But his followers do not accept Krishna as such, for it is very difficult to know Krishna, even though one has transcendental realization of impersonal Brahman. So this is quite significant. We see that there are many different types of persons who attempt to reach transcendental or spiritual realization. This is very nicely explained in this third verse of the Bhagavad-gītā. And in these two verses here, it is also further explained that these devotees were endeavoring to know Krishna. Krishna explained all these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls. Udaraha sarva evaiti. We see in this Shankaracharya, Prabhupada often describes how he was a Vaishnava in disguise. He wrote the Jagannatha-astakam. He wrote prayers worshiping Lord Narasimha Karavalamba Stotram. He recited this Bhajagovindam verses. It's very significant to see that his followers, although they claim to be following Shankaracharya, they don't follow his example of worshiping Krishna. They think that Krishna worship is simply another manifestation of sentimentalism, that bhakti is simply sentimentalism and a pursuit of jnana, that this is the highest level. So we have to very, very carefully study each and every word, each and every sentence of these purports by Srila Prabhupada to understand the truth about the position of Lord Krishna. Shankaracharya himself has described Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam Mudamati Samprapti Sanniti Kale Dukrin Karane Nahi Dukrin Karane. That simply worship Govinda, simply your grammatical exercises of Sanskrit, that will not save you at the time of death. So this is quite significant, because we see that the Vaishnavas, they're engaged in worshiping Lord Vasudeva. Prabhupada explains in this text number 18 in the purport on page 390, similarly, the Supreme Lord is very fond of his devotee and cannot be separated from him. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 9.457, the Lord says, Aham bhakta paradhino yasvatantara ibadvija sadhubhya grastaridayo bhakter bhakta janapriyaha. The devotees are always in my heart, and I'm always in the heart of the devotees. The devotee does not know anything beyond me, and I also cannot forget the devotee. There is a very intimate relationship between me and the pure devotees. Pure devotees in full knowledge are never out of spiritual touch, and therefore they're very much dear to me. But somebody may say, well, is it difficult to reach this level of complete absorption in Krishna and in Krishna's service? Yes and no. It is not easy. We see in text number 19 that after many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me. So what does that surrender mean? Just like we see, because the question may be asked, well, what will be the benefit of this surrender to Krishna if we understand Krishna? Because everybody in the material world is always absorbed of wanting to know the result of their activities. People work, people do certain activities for a certain reason. So what would be the reason? What will be the benefit? We see Krishna in many places in his Bhagavad-gītā explain very nicely what will be the benefit. In chapter 4, text 9, Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tatpataha tyaktva punara janma naiti mam iti suarjuna. That for one who remembers, one who knows the nature of my transcendental activities and my appearance, for such a person, when he leaves his body, does not come back. Tyaktva punara janma naiti mam iti suarjuna. You will not suffer. Just the other day, I was preaching to one person on the hill here, explaining that there's another world where there's no suffering, there's no struggle, there's no electrical failures, there's no birth there, no the old age, no disease, no need to rush to the pharmacy or to the doctor, no earthquakes, no volcanoes, no famine, no war. None of the suffering of this world are there in the spiritual world. That is the kingdom of God, the Vaikuntha. Kunta means anxiety. Vaikuntha means without anxiety. The planet of Krishna, Goloka Vrindavan, where Krishna is there with his associates, with Radharani, with the gopis, with his mother, his father, his friends. Goloka technically means the planet of the cows. So that particular planet is reachable. One can go to that spiritual world or to Vaikuntha, the unlimited spiritual planets of the spiritual world. Well, how does one do that? One has to take shelter of a pure devotee of Krishna, the Shuddha Vaishnava, the transcendental Mahabhagavata, the Mahabhagavata Sreshto, the ultimate Mahabhagavata, like Srila Prabhupada. By taking shelter of his instructions, of his orders, of his teachings, non-adulterated teachings, then one can reach that spiritual platform. It is not a dry philosophy that it says that all these wonderful things in the books, but it can be reached. But we have to apply our mind and our intelligence to submissively hear the message of Lord Krishna. Just yesterday, some devotees sent me a clip on the internet of a sheikh of the United Arab Emirates, and he came to visit India. Now, some way or other, this person was very fortunate. He started his lecture by saying, Jai Sitaram, Jai Siyaram. And the whole crowd erupted. Oh, he was a Muslim, understandably, from close to Saudi Arabia. But some way or other, he was fortunate to utter the name of Sitaram. So that is very, very good. We see in the process of bhakti that is described in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, Sravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, that the process of Navavida Bhakti, or 9 process of devotional, includes the process of offering obeisances, the process of offering prayers. So we see that there's numerous different religions or different faiths or different sects. They're offering their prayers or homages to God. But who actually knows God? What does he do? Where he lives? What are his activities? What are his transcendental qualities? How to reach God? The most detailed information is given in Bhagavad-gītā and Srimad Bhagavatam. That is why Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has described Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanamamalam is the topmost literature, the topmost evidence of how to understand God. It is not that we decry or criticize other faiths or other religions. No, we don't. If they're engaged in the pursuit of spiritual knowledge, if they're engaged in trying to develop their love of God, very good, excellent. If they're doing their namaz or their obeisances 5 times a day, very good. If they're going to their church or their synagogue and praying, very good. But what is the result? What is the level of understanding? What is the level of realization? This is what we see here in this text of 7 Bhagavad-gītā, chapter 7, text 19. Prabhupada explains on page 391, realizing this, he becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and surrenders to him. At such a time, one can understand that Lord Sri Krishna's mercy is everything, and that he's the cause of all causes, and that this material manifestation is not independent from him. He realizes the material world to be a perverted reflection of spiritual variegatedness, and realizes that in everything there is a relationship with the Supreme Lord Krishna. Thus, he thinks of everything in relation to Vasudeva or Sri Krishna. So this is the level of understanding. There are many foolish persons who think that all the descriptions in the Mahabharata, the Vedas, the Ramayana, and everything, that this is all mythology. This is foolishness. There are many lectures where Prabhupada described those who are atheists, who are frustrated, they describe these activities as mythology. They have misunderstanding. Why? Because they do not hear from bona fide realized acharyas in transcendental disciplined succession. Evam parampara praptam, imam rajarichayu viduhu. We see in the Bhagavad-gītā, Krishna explained that this knowledge of Bhagavad-gītā was given by the transcendental disciplined succession. And he's giving this knowledge to Arjuna to reestablish the transcendental disciplined succession. Very important. We'll take a few minutes here to read a lecture from Srila Prabhupada. We have often described, this is the book. This is the collected lectures on Bhagavad-gītā As It Is, volume number 6, where Prabhupada gave a lecture on these 2 particular verses in New York on October 12th, 1966. October 12th, 1966, Bhagavad-gītā 7:18, page 77. Prabhupada, Udaraha sarva evaiti, Gyani tuatmeva mematam, Astitaha sayuktatma, Mami vaduttamam gatim. Prabhupada. Now we were discussing in our last meeting about the 4 classes of men who are adverse to the worship of God, and 4 classes of men who take to the worship of God. So far, 4 classes of men who take to the worship of God, they are recommended as udaraha, very magnanimous. Such people are very magnanimous. Sarva evaiti. Evaiti. Out of that 4 classes of men, just like distressed, poverty-stricken, inquisitive, and philosophers. These 4 classes of men, if they are pious on the background, they begin worship of God. But the distressed and the poverty-stricken may give up worship of God if they are frustrated. But those who are inquisitive and philosophers, they do not give up worship of God or research work in the science of God. They do not give up. They continue. Therefore, Lord Krishna says that out of these 4 classes, one who is in reality knowledge of the science of God and searching after the truth, he is very dear to him. Now, out of that researching scholars, the Lord says, Bahunam janmanamante Jnanavan mam prapadyate Vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sudurlabaha. Now, this research work about the science of God has to be prosecuted for several births after births. Bahunam janmanamante, after many births. God realization, it is very easy, but at the same time, it is very difficult. Easy for them who accept it as truth, and for those who are trying to understand by dint of his knowledge, advancement of knowledge, he has to create his faith after he finishes his research work. Then that takes many, many births. Bahunam janmanamante. There are different kinds of transcendentalists. They're called tattvavit. Tattvavit means one who knows the absolute truth. In the Srimad Bhagavata, it is said, Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvam, yajnanam advayam. Tattvavid, the transcendentalists, call it absolute truth, which is yajnanam advayam, where there is no duality. In the transcendental knowledge, there is no duality. There is nothing different from nothing. Everything is on the same level. That is called, one who knows that knowledge is called tattvavit. Now, the tattvavit says that the supreme absolute truth is recognized in 3 aspects: Brahmeti, Paramatmiti, Bhagavaniti Shabdyate. Brahmeti, impersonal Brahman, and Paramatma, the localized super soul, and Bhagavan. Bhagavan means the personality of Godhead. So there are 3 angles of vision. Just like from a distant place, if you see one mountain, you'll see just like something cloudy. If you advance more, the same mountain, you'll see something green. And if you enter into that mountain, you'll find so many variegatedness, so many trees, so many animals. So objective is the same, but under different angles of vision, from distance, different people have got different conception of the absolute truth. Another example, just like the sun, the sunshine and sun disk and the sun planet. One who is in the sunshine, or one who is studying the sunshine, or one who is studying the sun disk, and one who is entering within the sun planet, just like we are trying to understand into the moon planet. Similarly, you can enter into the sun planet provided you've got the qualification. So in the sunshine or in the sun disk, are in the sun planet, they are in the sun. But there are degrees. One who is in the sunshine, he cannot claim that I'm in the sun planet. He cannot claim that. So one who is in the sun planet is better situated than one who is in the sunshine. So sunshine is compared with the Brahman effulgence, Brahma Jyoti, and sun disk is compared to the super soul. And the sun planet within, that is compared with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just like in this planet, you've got so many personalities. Similarly, according to Vedic literature, we understand in the sun planet, there are varieties of living entities, but their bodies are made of fire, and our body is made of earth. Similarly, their bodies are made of fire. There are 5 elements in the material nature: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So in different planets, there are different atmospheres and different bodies also. Don't think that each and every planet of the same quality. No. Same quality in the sense because these 5 elements are present there. Without these 5 elements, no material thing exists. So somewhere the fire is prominent, somewhere the air is prominent, somewhere water is prominent, somewhere earth is prominent. So in this planet or in some other earthly planet, earth is predominant. Similarly, there are other planets also. So don't think that other planets are vacant. No. So far, Vedic literatures are concerned, just like modern scientists. They're calculating that the moon is full of dust, but according to Vedic literatures, moon is not full of dust. There are also higher living entities. And from your practical reason also, you can just understand that a lump of dust cannot be so brilliant so that it illuminates the whole earth. It is not possible. Anyway, let the scientists go on with their own research work. So far, we've got information from Vedic literature, all the planets, sun planet, moon planet, Venus, they're full of living entities. And they've got different types of the body. So in this way, Prabhupada explains, there are so many explanations in these various lectures, but for the time being, we'll return the platform to Vishwakarma Prabhu and for more comments and discussion. Hare Krishna.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu, for your presentation on the Bhagavad-gītā As It Is. Getting back to the text 19, after many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Here's the key point. Sumahatma sudurlabhaha. Such a great soul is very rare. And so in this particular verse, we're getting an understanding of who Srila Prabhupada is, because there are many gurus that exist in this world. Guru means teacher. And here, Prabhupada is recognized by his disciples as a pure devotee of Krishna. Oftentimes you see Prabhupada in his quarters. And he always has his bead bag with him. Very interesting. Prabhupada has his bead bag with him because whatever great men do, common men will follow. Whatever standards they set by exemplary acts, the whole world pursues. So many so-called leaders, gurus, they do not practice what they preach. This is something that is hypocritical. In other words, they're telling people, you chant your rounds, you worship Jesus, you perform all the scriptural injunctions that are provided to you, but I'm not going to. I'm going to tell you what to do, but I'm not going to do it myself. This is the one amazing part of Srila Prabhupada's life with us, was he did everything by example. He was a true sannyasi, totally renounced from everything material. I'll give you an example. When Prabhupada came to Toronto, we had purchased the temple, a very, very prominent building in Canada. It's on Avenue Road coming down from Highway 401. And Vinkat, you may not know this, they call it the gateway to Toronto. The gateway to Toronto. In other words, prior to Yonge Street, which is a main street in Toronto, there's Avenue Road. Now, Avenue Road, it was the main highway coming into the city from 401. So there are two churches situated at DuPont and Avenue Road. And they are the two towers that enter into the city. When you come down through the city to get to the downtown area, you pass through these two towers, and then you come to the Parliament buildings, which is only 2 kilometers from the temple. We had purchased the building specifically because we wanted to put Krishna in the face of the government leaders. We wanted them to see how Krishna is in charge of our country, not them. Not them that are taking us to nuclear war at any moment. That's what's going on here with these leaders. So Prabhupada was there. It was an amazing accomplishment for us as a group to be able to get this building for Krishna. Prabhupada sent me a letter. He said, it is a topmost triumph that you've got this building for Krishna. Now use it to preach Krishna consciousness to the souls here in Canada. Now, when Prabhupada was with me, or with us, I mean, I was blessed to be able to have many darshans with him. He was very humble, extremely humble. He was not demanding. We had made a big mistake. When he first came, we didn't know how to decorate his room. There's a tower to the side of the building with the quarters for the priest. So we had set up the office for him, and we had a tall desk, and we had a chair, like an executive chair. We thought, oh, okay, we'll make an executive chair and we'll have a tall desk like that. So Prabhupada came, he arrived in Toronto, glorious. It was so glorious at the airport. And then we came to this temple. He came in, I've got a picture of him, first time looking at the altar. We had an altar that wasn't finished, but it was still the frame had been built, but we hadn't done the decorations. But he came, it's such a beautiful picture. He was so excited and so pleased. I can understand why, because here he had come previously in 65, and all of a sudden in 1975, we had purchased this prominent building in downtown Toronto, a very, very significant thing. And Prabhupada, like he had said, it is a topmost triumph for Krishna that you've achieved this success. Topmost triumph. So it is interesting to note that when Prabhupada was with us, did he ask, who has title to this building? Did he ask once? No. Was he interested in being on title in the building? No. Was he interested in money? No. Was he interested in anything mundane related to this? Not one thing. He came as a gentleman, as a pure devotee. Bahunam janmanante ante, Samahatma Sudurlabha, a great soul, not interested in anything except the benefit of his devotees in spreading Krishna consciousness. When Prabhupada came in 1975 to Toronto, we lived before we had got the building. He came to visit us. We also went and saw the building at that time. He wanted us to get the building. He offered to give $300,000 to the church people from his own money to buy the temple for us. And they turned it down. They said, we'd rather burn the building down than sell it to A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. They'd rather burn it. Ridiculous. Pathetic. Anyway, there's a great story about that, how we tricked the Christians, and eventually we got the building. This was Krishna's plan. But Prabhupada, when he was there on Gerrard Street, he stayed. We were going to arrange, we only had one building there, a 187 Gerrard Street, and there were 55 devotees living in the house, one house. We had 16 brahmacharis on the third floor. Everybody used to line their sleeping bags up one after one. If there was no room. And then we would also, in the morning, all we had was a bathtub. So eventually we got to the point everyone would come in with their kalpans, leave them on, and then one devotee would shower them, because there was only like 2-3 minutes you could take a shower, so that everybody could be at Mangal Arti at 4:15. This was the thing. It was like a machine. But everybody was happy to spread Krishna consciousness. In Prabhupada's association, we were going to arrange for Prabhupada to stay at the Royal York Hotel. Which is the big hotel. We thought, we'll get Prabhupada at the Royal York Hotel. We also arranged a car through Wayne Fisher, I think his name was. He had a Lincoln Continental. So I asked him, here, please lend us your car so we can pick Prabhupada up at the airport. We had no vehicle except vans for Sankirtan. So Prabhupada came to Pembroke Street. Prabhupada came to Gerrard Street, I should say. And we told him, Prabhupada, we want to book you at the Royal York Hotel, which is at the time was the main hotel in Toronto. And you know what Prabhupada's response was, everyone? No, I want to stay with all of you. So he stayed on Pembroke Street, which is around the corner, in a bachelor apartment of one of the Grihastas. Now, for many of you, you don't know what Pembroke Street was like. It was where all the prostitutes and all the drunkards were. We lived in a rough part of the city called Cabbage Town. Cabbage Town. And it was because the park across the street was a place where the homeless and the drunkards and the drug addicts stayed. Where did Prabhupada want to stay? He stayed with us. He stayed on Pembroke Street. He stayed in this apartment. He did not want to be away from the devotees. He wasn't interested in staying at the Royal York Hotel. That is practical experience. If you see Prabhupada's example, Mahatma Sudurlabha, he had no interest in any kind of fancy residence for himself. He was only interested in one thing, and he said that to us. I want to be with the devotees. He was a humble servant. Trinadapi Sunichena Tororapi Sahishnuna. He exemplified the principles of sannyas that Lord Chaitanya demonstrated when he appeared here practically in the 15th century. Prabhupada was not interested in the title. Who owned the temple on Avenue Road, even though it's worth over $30 million now? Who cared? He did not care about anything. The only thing he cared about was spreading the Sankirtan mission of Lord Chaitanya. Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. This is the real meaning of Mahatma, not Mahatma Gandhi, who wasn't sure about who he was or why he was here in the world except for political reasons. This is nonsense. Prabhupada would talk about that. He left Mahatma Gandhi's mission in his early years and took up the Sankirtan mission of Lord Chaitanya, which is true welfare work to get people out of the confusion that they're this body of blood, pus, stool, and urine that will live for 50 or 60 years and then it's dead, or it could be blown up by a nuclear bomb. Nowadays, they're fighting. They're bringing all this fighting to the world. These politicians, these madmen. And at any moment, a nuclear war could take place like we've discussed in the past. So it is very important for us to understand that Prabhupada set the example for us. We are the Prabhupada Disciples Association. Why? Because we follow Srila Prabhupada as the perfect example of a devotee that surrendered to Krishna and is chanting Hare Krishna all the time. His schedule was so rigid, Prabhus. It's extraordinary. I feel so fallen because I know how great Prabhupada was and how fallen I am. Prabhupada had told me that on a walk on the beaches. You might have heard the story. I asked Prabhupada, I was afraid to ask Prabhupada a question. I was very afraid because there's two sides to the sword here. If you ask a good question, then you might get a positive reaction. But if you asked a stupid question, you could have got chastised, which was also a blessing for us. So at the time, it was in 1976, we went for a walk on the beaches, and I asked Prabhupada this question. I stopped and I said, Prabhupada, because Tamal Krishna had introduced a point that if you were a brahmachari and you got married, it was considered to be a fall down. This bogus philosophy, that he was propagating. So I asked Prabhupada that question. I said, Srila Prabhupada, if you're a single man and you decide you want to get married, is that considered to be a fall down? Prabhupada looked at me. He said, where is the question of fall down when you're already fallen? Where is the question of fall down when you're already fallen? We're in the material world here, everyone. We're in a fallen condition. The main thing is to get out of this material world by following in the footsteps. This is very important point, Yaśodā Prabhu. It's following in the footsteps of the pure devotee, not changing everything based on your own mental speculation, which is something that we've seen go on since Prabhupada's departure. And we hear these people, our God brothers, so many of them, they're all off on their own mental speculation to do this or do that, their particular way, instead of following in the footsteps of the Mahatma, the great soul. That is Srila Prabhupada. This is very rare, everyone. For us to get the association of a pure devotee, to set up this Prabhupada Disciples Association, to have the opportunity to be together every week and take advantage of this opportunity is very, very rare. So let us understand that Prabhupada is setting the highest example. He is the Mahatma that we're speaking about. He is the great soul. And if you can follow in his footsteps, again, I'm referring to when I got initiated. in my own pastimes with Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada told me to my face, you are not the chief engineer, but you are the servant of the servant of the servant of the chief engineer. If you can achieve that, then you'll become great. This is our position, every person here. Follow in the footsteps of the pure devotee, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda. Study his life, understand his greatness, and try to follow in his footsteps. Exactly the way he walked, we walk, and this way, this mission will carry on without adulteration. Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu, please comment.
Well, this point about no adulteration is very important. We've often discussed, and all these bona fide Vaishnava Sampradayas in India, they never adulterate or change the books of their acharyas or the commentaries of their acharyas. But in our movement, they don't have that respect. Not only that, but they will even decry Prabhupada's original books by claiming these are Ritvik books, that Prabhupada's original writings are non-authorized. So this is a very dangerous position that we see here that has been taken. And devotees should not fall for this. Devotees should be very aware that Prabhupada's original writings are the basis of the Krishna consciousness movement. They are our spiritual sustenance, our spiritual nourishment. And nobody should accept these revised, adulterated books. Nobody. We can open it up for discussion.
Yes. Vinkad, if you could make a comment, please.
Yeah. Hi. Hare Krishna.
Haribol. Haribol, Prabhu. Glories to Prabhupada.
So, well, yeah, just reading through the verse, in verse 19, it was mentioned, in the beginning of spiritual realization, while one is trying to give up one's attachment to materialism, there is some leaning towards impersonalism. But when one is further advanced, he can understand that there are activities in the spiritual life and that these activities constitute devotional service. So, I mean, in my own experience, I can see the leaning towards impersonalism, because like I sometimes observe what I think, I try to think of Krishna, but I always think, oh, okay, Krishna is there, but there must be something, beyond that, like, because what came before Krishna, like these are all nonsense thoughts which I get, but so I can see Prabhupada is saying that leaning towards impersonalism, like it's very hard to imagine that Krishna is the ultimate end and there's nothing before him. I mean, it's just mentally, it's hard to understand. I mean, yeah, that's one thing. And then you were mentioning Mahatma Gandhi, right? And so Srila Prabhupada says in chapter 17, he says there are persons who manufacture, there are persons who manufacture modes of austerity and penances which are not mentioned in the scriptural injunctions. For instance, fasting for some ulterior purpose, such as to promote a purely political end, is not mentioned in the scriptural directions. The scriptures recommend fasting for spiritual advancement, not for some political end or social purpose. Persons who take to such austerities are, according to Bhagavad-gītā, certainly demoniac. Their acts are against the scriptural injunction and are not beneficial for the people in general. Actually, they act out of pride, false ego, lust, and attachment for material enjoyment. By such activities, not only are the combination of material elements of which the body is constructed disturbed, but also the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself living within the body. So such unauthorized fasting or austerities for some political end are certainly very disturbing to others. They're not mentioned in the Vedic literature. So, I mean, Srila Prabhupada, I think he was talking about Mahatma Gandhi when he mentioned, wrote that.
Exactly. I wanted you to go to chapter 18. There's a series of verses at the end which are very important, but we'll go to text 65. Manmana bhava mad bhakto mad yaji mam namaskaru mam eva yasi satyam te pratijane priyoshi me. So here, this is the key one of the key verses at the end of the Bhagavad-gītā. There are these series of key verses that we should memorize. Always think of me and become my devotee. Worship me and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. So unless one has this position of serving Krishna, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reaction. Do not fear, which is the next verse. Now, in the purport here in text 65, just go to the purport here, please. The most confidential part of knowledge is that one should become a pure devotee of Krishna. Always think of him and act for him. One should not become an official meditator. Life should be molded that one will always have the chance to think of Krishna. One should always act in such a way that all his daily activities are in connection with Krishna. That was Prabhupada's perfect example, everyone. He would arrange his life in such a way that throughout the 24 hours he cannot but think of Krishna. And the Lord's promise is that anyone who is in such pure consciousness will certainly return to the abode of Krishna, where he will be engaged in the association of Krishna face to face. This most confidential part of knowledge is spoken to Arjuna because he is the dear friend of Krishna. Everyone who follows the path of Arjuna can become a dear friend to Krishna and attain the same perfection as Arjuna. So having faith in these words is the key to getting out of the entanglement of birth and death in this material world. We have a question from Poland from Robert, Bhakta Robert, who's a very nice devotee living in Poland and eager to take shelter of Prabhupada's mission as his humble servant. Robert, your question. Can you hear me, Robert? Looks like his screen might be locked.
Hare Krishna. Am I being heard? Or
Pardon? Not really. Your vocal. Try speaking slowly and see how it works.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, try. Go ahead. Speak.
Okay, is it clear?
Not really clear.
Oh,
No,
right.
just try. If not, then we'll
Could you
go
put
to
the
another
microphone
point.
closer? Could you put the microphone closer to you somehow?
Can you put the microphone closer, Robert?
I will write the question.
Okay, you write it, and then Vinkat will ask the question for you. Anandabhaya Mata, please, if you have a question or comment, share it with us.
Thank you. When Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu was reading from Srila Prabhupada's class, October 12, 1966, Prabhupada mentions something that is confusing to me, and he says he's comparing, he's comparing the planets. He's saying that the moon, the sun is a planet, and then in another, just before that, he says, but there's also something like there's also a sun disk. What is the difference between the sun disk and the sun planet? Because he separated them.
I'm not sure. Maybe Yaśoda, you can clarify that, please. You've got the book in front of you. Your microphone, please, Prabhu.
Yeah, it's unmuted.
Okay. There's the sun planet, the sun god, Surya Narayana, and the sun disk, which is an effulgence from the sun. The sun planet, the sun globe is a specific planet. And then there's the effulgence from the sun. That's what Prabhupada refers to as the sun disk.
Okay.
So because the sun is always, there's a big procession that goes on around the universe, around Mount Meru. And there's a description in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam how there's 50,000 sages called the Valikilyas, which are the size of a thumb, and they're going in procession in front of the sun's chariot, the chariot of the sun, and they're basically going around and reciting Vedic mantras, and there's like these 7 horses that are driving the chariot, and Aruna is the chariot driver, and the Surya Narayana is sitting there. That's why Prabhupada basically says in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam that every living entity should worship the sun god in the morning. There's a specific mantra from the Rig Vedas. There's also a mantra from the Brahma Samhita, Yat Chakshuresha Sabisa Sakala Grahanam, that people can recite. And Brahmanas, when they recite their Gayatri mantras and other Gayatri mantras, are worshiping the sun god and Lord Chaitanya, Lord Krishna, like that. But there's a specific personality within the sun planet, the sun globe. And when Prabhupada is referring to the sun globe, the sun planet, the sun disk, there's the effulgence from the sun that goes all around the universe. There's a sunlight. That's why Prabhupada makes the difference between the sun planet and the sun, the effulgence from the sun, the sunlight. They're all related, but they're also systematically different. I hope that helps.
Yes, exactly.
You're welcome.
Explains it very well. I just wanted to say that when you gave my husband and I second initiation, you gave us the mantras to worship the sun god every time we chant our Gayatri, and we do that. And it's very powerful and very wonderful, and we feel very enlivened by knowing these mantras and what they mean and how important they are. Thank you for sharing that with us, Prabhu.
Excellent.
Nice.
Thank you very much.
I just want to make a point of correction.
Yes, please.
The name of this devotee is not Ananda Baya. It's Anda, A-N-D-A.
Okay.
B-A-H-Y-A. That's a name of Radharani from the Narada Pancharatra. Just want to make the correction. I think there's a couple of questions that came on the screen. I didn't get the chance
we'll
to go very fast.
We'll get Vinkat to read them out. Before we go ahead with that, I'd like to call upon Jiva Goswami Prabhu, our godbrother, if he could please make a comment to further enhance our understanding of the verse.
I'm sorry, Prabhu. He's in another meeting right now that is always scheduled this time on Saturday mornings. I'm really sorry he can't.
Okay, Vinkat, please. Could you go ahead from Robert's questions from Poland, Yaśodā-nandana? Go ahead, please read the questions.
Okay, there are 3 questions. So the first question is, I'll read all 3. How can we check our degree of surrender? So that's number 1. How can we check our degree of surrender? And then number 2, what do great souls in the bhakti line say about their surrender to the Lord? How do they think about themselves in terms of surrender? And number 3, is there ever any need in the dealings between devotees to estimate another devotee's degree of surrender?
Yaśodā, please.
Yeah, Srila Prabhupada describes in the 1st canto of the Bhagavatam in one place that one should test how he has become freed from the influence of lust, anger, and greed. And there's numerous different ways to check. Prabhupada's system was pretty simple, that devotees should chant. People who are sadhakas or practitioners, they should chant their rounds, they should chant Hare Krishna. They should follow the regular principles and study his books and preach. This is how we check. By doing this process regularly, one will become freed from the influence of the modes of nature, and one's spiritual understanding and surrender will increase. Now, as far as other devotees, how do we judge their surrender? There's a lot of examples of great devotees like Bhaktivedanta Thakur and our Srila Prabhupada, of course, and Krishna Das Kaviraj, Rupa Goswami. these devotees have exhibited a certain mindset, a certain devotional mood, which is very important to observe and study. There's an article that some of us put together called Dangers and Pitfalls on the Path of Pure Devotion. I'll send that to you. And it's a bunch of quotes from Srila Prabhupada, basically from his own purports, explaining that although there's a systematic path of process of making progress on the path of bhakti, there is also a lot of warnings by these great acharyas what not to do. And then there's also several quotes from Bhaktivedanta Thakur, Krishnadas Kaviraj, King Kulashekar, Srila Prabhupada, expressing what is the devotional mentality that one should have, that how a devotee should be thinking. Because what we have seen many times is devotees acting in a way, demanding respect, demanding position, demanding worship, institutionalizing things that are not in line with the devotional mentality of spiritual progress, based on false ego, based on false understanding, based on misinterpretation of Prabhupada's instruction. I mean, this is a very vast topic, but basically one can test himself how much he's progressing. Just like Prabhupada gave the example, just like if you're hungry, when you eat the meal, you have a plate of prasadam, you eat, then you don't need a certificate from anybody. You're going to know, yes, I'm full, I am satisfied. Just like the Vaishnavas, when they finish a meal, it is described in the Shastras, they say something called triptosmi, I'm satisfied. And because the fire of digestion in the belly is there digesting the food, one is supposed to rub the belly 3 times and say Narayana, 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 out of respect for Lord Vishnu as the fire of digestion within the body. So there's all kinds of transcendental ways given by the acharyas to remember Krishna. Just like Prabhupada gave that example, that if you eat the meal, you're going to be satisfied. So if we follow these principles and follow in the footsteps of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Trinada Pisunachena, then gradually we will feel the lessening of the influence of the mode of nature. We will feel the satisfaction of the chanting. It's there. The process works. Simply, we have to follow the process in a humble and very meek attitude. That will help. Aprakrita, qu'est-ce que tu penses? I'm speaking to Aprakrita, asking what does he think? Qu'est-ce que tu penses, mon ami?
Microphone.
Can't hear you.
Ok, oui. Non, ok. Ok, tu m'entends? Non.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, we can hear you. On te comprend. No,
It went
no.
off.
No, okay.
Your
I prefer
voice.
to just listen, you know. But one thing, I like to be on I like to watch this meeting. They are helping me a lot, you know. I'm very thankful to all of you to help in this way. Thank you very much.
Very good.
Thank you, Aprakrita. Do we have another question, Vinkat, from Russia? What is the question? Can you see the question? Please
So there's
call
a
it out.
question by Vishwajit Prabhu in Russia. What is the importance of mercy and humbleness in devotional service?
Okay,
okay.
I'll respond to that. Prabhu, these qualities, there's 26 qualities of a devotee that develop within the character of an individual through the practice of Krishna consciousness. So it's very important to have mercy. For example, mercy means you protect the animals. You eat prasadam every day. So automatically there's mercy. There's mercy on the conditioned soul because we're giving them information. You're not the body. Aham Brahmasmi. You're the spirit soul. You're the eternal servant of Krishna. Sat Chit Ananda. Eternity, knowledge, and bliss. That is your character. not the material body, which is doomed according to the laws of material nature to come and go like the rising and setting of the sun. It comes and goes every day. So every day people are dying. This is the nature of material life. We're insignificant. We're small, insignificant specks in the universe. But we have the ability to transcend this material world by the mercy of the pure devotee. And by following his instructions, we can become humble. That's what humility means. Humility means I am the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. Please, that is the most important instruction from Srila Prabhupada to each one of us. Not to become proud, not to be puffed up with all kinds. People think, oh, I need a PhD to go back to Godhead. No, that's not true. You need to be a humble servant. You need to sweep like King Prachaparudra. He went in front of the Jagannath cart. He swept the dirt away as a humble servant, not some puffed up, rich, aristocratic king, but as the servant of the Supreme Lord. This is how you become great, as I mentioned earlier. So being humble, having mercy, getting all of these that automatically comes when you become a servant of the Lord and his mission, the Sankirtan mission. Robert, I see you have another answer, but unfortunately, I'm going to have to say that this class is now at the end of the time, and we're going to have to separate again till we meet again tomorrow morning for the Srimad Bhagavatam class at 10 a.m. Canadian time, US time on the Eastern Zone. And you can determine that time in your own zone and share this opportunity to be a part of the Sankirtan mission of Lord Chaitanya, Guru, Shastra, Sadhu. This is the formula. Not that we just ignore the association of devotees, but we embrace that association, especially those devotees that are focused on the mission of Srila Prabhupada to spread the preaching of Lord Chaitanya to the entire globe. And that's our goal. So I want to make one final announcement. We are starting a special program on Thursdays. It's coming up. Vinkat, what date is the schedule for the first special event? And what will the topic be? Can you look that up for me?
Let me just look it up. I don't remember right now. It was March 14th. I remember that. But the exact date, it's a Tuesday, actually. Oh, no. Sorry.
It's a Thursday.
March 16th, Thursday. Yeah.
So we're going to be starting a special 1-hour show. It'll be a panel discussion. There won't be, it's not a class. We'll have specific topics that we'll be dealing with. Can you read out the topics for us, Vinkat?
Okay.
I'm sorry to, go ahead, please.
So the first topic is, let me open it right here. So the first topic is the bona fide system of initiations set up by Prabhupada. Set up by Srila Prabhupada. So,
and then the second week, it'll be what?
Second week, it'll be about the book changes and BBT and the BBTI, all these kind of issues, the history about all that.
Like that.
And
so,
then,
go ahead, please.
And then we have two more topics. Third one is Srila Prabhupada's instructions with regard to Gaudiya Math, how to associate with them or not associate with them. And then topic 4 is Guru Tattva, how to understand the position of the Guru.
Yeah. So These will be topics that we'll be discussing on Thursdays. You'll see the advertisements. If you're on Facebook, you'll be able to see the advertisements for them and the links for it so that you can participate. It'll be to listen anyway, and the panel will discuss and review these topics and other topics. If you have any suggestions for us, for topics you'd like us to discuss in this panel, then you can send them off to me or Yaśodā or Venkat or any of our group, and they'll send it off to us so that we can continue to give you more information on the philosophy of Krishna consciousness according to how Prabhupada wanted the mission to be spread. Very important. There's so many different opinions, but the fact is that Prabhupada and his Prabhupada disciples have a clear vision of what we should do moving forward into the future and go back home, back to Godhead under his guidance and direction. So thank you, everyone, once again, for joining us at the Prabhupada Disciples Association class. And Venkat, if you could bring up the kirtan at the end, we'll have this as the last section. If anybody wants to stay on after the class, they can. We'll stay on for a few minutes and you can ask other questions which are different than from the any questions that you might have after the end of this chant. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to the Sankirtan movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivedanta Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivedanta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Hare
text and then I just was like, I'll call him. I can't type.
Let us offer our respectful obeisances to all the assembled devotees.
Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo
Namo
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 Namaha.
Namaha.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna